Wonderful. Okay, so it's probably what we might do is we'll stay focused on this and we'll go straight into item 11 and then we'll go back to the film protocol in case people are wondering which way around. You all right with that side?
Yeah, just move.
We will. So I will move that we receive the presentation, seconded by Councillor Philippaina. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. Right, straight into it. Thanks, team.
Kia ora koutou, Danielle Kennedy toku ingoa. So if we skip back a couple of slides, sorry we've jumped in a little bit too early. So I'm going to take the report as read and not labour too much. I just thought I'd give you a quick overview. This is the third time we've come to see you recently about Retrofit Your Home. Last month you approved new interventions including solar and EV chargers, etc., a whole set of them, and last week the supplier procurement was approved for new suppliers for retrofit, and that will commence next month. So what we're coming to for today is to propose a change to be included in the consultation document for the annual plan 2020-21. And that just covers off the introduction of mandatory home fit assessments, and home fit's been covered already. Thank you very much. Wonderful presentation. And that's for assessments for all applications with a value over $2,000, and that equates to 87% of all of our applications. So you've just heard about the beauty of home fit. The benefits we believe this provides are a comprehensive home performance advice for all those that would be making applications for retrofit, and that increases the likelihood of multiple different products or behaviours happening rather than just, say if you're just going to implement or get a quote for a heat pump, it gives you the whole picture of your home health rather than just one thing at a time. And it also establishes a benchmark and a pathway for that certification, and we'll be looking at including that on LIMS. This is also a slide you've seen before, which just covers off the demographics, who's using retrofit, who's applying in terms of where they're from across the city. You can see that we have a lot of applications from west and south, and also the makeup of who's applying. So when we're putting this recommendation forward, we've really thought carefully about the impact on low-income houses and households, and it's been designed with a threshold that $2,000, so that those just applying for a small application won't be disadvantaged. The ECA subsidy scheme with Warmer Kiwi Homes, that is often then topped up with the retrofit application, and so those the majority would be under $2,000 for that, and so it won't apply to those applicants. And we're going to be promoting through marketing through the new suppliers to promote Retrofit Your Home to landlords in both south and west, because those particular areas have really high proportion of renters. So they're not homeowners, so they wouldn't be eligible for this, but we can work to make sure they have warm and dry homes through working with the landlords. And we're also working, we're going to be at the Infrastructure and Environmental Services Mana Whenua Hui this week, talking about how we can promote to Māori homeowners, and also look at the RFP that's going out for the suppliers coming up, that there are Māori organisations approached for that as well. Thank you.
Fantastic, yeah. As Andrew said, I mean, this is fantastic work by the team, just taking it far and wide. Should we take questions and then comments? No questions? Member Brown.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you for the reports, which generally support. But just like on the covering report of point 47, page 36, sort of hoping that that's not really the communication strategy on how this proposal is seeking to engage the Māori community, insofar as the Māori board's role is not to act as your consultant. So do you have any advice around how you're going to support that?
I mean, through the chair, absolutely. I think at the last committee there was a suggestion that we should contact the Independent Māori Statutory Board, and we had got in touch with your staff. But as Danielle said, we are also going to the INES Mana Whenua Hui this Friday to talk about some of our ideas and get their feedback on those, and it will be part of our overall promotion for the program. So.
Great, thank you.
No other questions? Any comments? No. I think let's just get on with it, which is the feeling. Who would like to move? Councillor Philippaina, and seconded Deputy Mayor. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. Thank you. And it is fantastic seeing this, which has sort of been going along for a long time now, really going a little bit more global or viral or whatever the expression is. So thank you to the awesome team doing this work. We'll move back to item number 10. Item number 9. So item number 9 on page 13 is the Auckland Film Protocol. And just while the team make their way forward, I just want to acknowledge Christian Eck, who's here from the industry. We did have a bit of a discussion about some of the concerns that the industry have, and I think our staff will touch on those. I've suggested that perhaps, I'm sure some of those issues will be raised around the table, but I've also suggested that we make an opportunity available post this meeting to talk with the industry and perhaps the 2 or 3 local boards who are the most involved with filming, and just try and smooth a little bit some of the tension between the local boards and the local communities and our film industry, because it's no secret, particularly for Councillor Cooper and myself coming from the West, that this is the big industry for us in our area. We're now sort of our 2nd, 3rd generation filmies who are critical to the economy of the West. So we are trying to make sure that we're even-handed, that we're thoughtful, and that we are doing everything we can to support both the environment and local communities, but the industry itself. So Christian, thank you. I had originally invited Christian to speak and then realised that we were probably in a submission process and it may have been an inappropriate thing to have offered, so I apologise to you, but thank you for being here. So I'll hand over to our staff.
Kia ora koutou. We just have a really short presentation to cover off, the public consultation process and the local board process that we have engaged in since you adopted the protocol for public consultation a couple of months ago now. So if I can make the technology work. Oh, I can, yes, there we go. And we also wanted to discuss briefly the sector response that we have had, which came through both the public consultation process and then in response to the revised version that was made available on local board agendas. So, as you will all recall, you approved the revised draft of the Auckland Film Protocol for public consultation. We went out for a 3-week consultation period. We received 74 submissions, and we received a mix of submissions from members of the public and from members of the screen sector who were either individuals or representing businesses within the sector. So I guess the key findings were, and this really, I guess, mostly focuses on the public views about their level of support for filming. We very clearly found, and this is consistent, as you may recall, with the findings from the work that was undertaken with the People's Panel last year, that there is a high degree of public support for filming occurring within Auckland. We found, so in terms of, we generally found around 75% of those who submitted were supportive of the film-friendly policy, and some partially supported. And what we generally found was that most people felt that the protocol was doing enough to manage the impacts of filming, and we asked specifically around impact on residents and businesses, impact on access to public open space and the environment, and the impact on our historic and cultural heritage. But even though people were supportive in terms of in the more, I guess, the comments they gave us or the additional responses to these questions, what we did find was that people are supportive, but they do want assurances that our environment is being protected, that our native species are being protected, and they do want to have some assurances that they continue to have a good level of access to public open space. So they don't want, I guess, to be unreasonably prohibited from using and accessing the public open space that they all value so much across Auckland. So what we effectively heard coming through this, I think, in terms of the key messaging, was that people are supportive, but they do want balance between enabling filming and ensuring that, I guess, the things that Aucklanders value continue to be protected for the long-term future. So in terms of, I guess, in terms of the commentary that came through, we did get a number of key themes that came through, which were largely around ensuring that there is consideration of the potential impact on the natural environment, the impact on our native species. There was quite a lot of concern about the extent to which filming might prohibit or prevent people from accessing public open space. And some of the commentary we heard coming through there was the fact that often people in Auckland travel quite significant distances to go to particular places, and sometimes they're somewhat surprised to find that there may be filming going on. Some of them enjoy that and enjoy that kind of experience. Others perhaps found that they all sort of expressed they would like to have known that filming was underway, which is where we come into the fact we did hear quite a lot of people talking about notification. We also got quite a lot of feedback coming through around compliance and enforcement. So it was largely people sort of felt that where policies, bylaws or legislation wasn't being followed, there should be clear enforcement for that. There was clear concern that health and safety of other park users and of people within the industry actually needs to be taken into account. And it probably won't surprise many of you that there was quite a lot of commentary about drones and the potential impact that people feel drones have on their enjoyment of both public open space, and also we also had expression of concern around people's sense that their privacy might be somewhat at risk from drone use. Now, I think we would acknowledge that based on some of the comments that came through, it's likely that some of the concern that was being expressed was as a result of probably more recreational drone use rather than drone use for commercial filming. So I guess we have, and you will see in the supporting material to your report and the track change version of the Auckland Film Protocol, we have proposed some changes in response to public submissions. And the version, well, a very similar version to what you have in front of you, went to the local boards at their August business meetings, where we, I guess, provided them with a summary of the public feedback. We, I guess, and then asked their views on the feedback that we received, our proposed responses, and asked for further feedback. The general view we got was that local boards were supportive of the changes that we've proposed making. There were, not surprisingly, some requests for some further changes, some of which we have attempted to respond to in the version of the protocol you have before you. And as I guess when we went back out to the local boards, of course, we put that their agendas included a track change version. In response to that track change version being then back in the public domain on the local board agenda, we have had further feedback from the screen sector, and as you will have seen in your report, we have included as an attachment the feedback that we received subsequent to the local board meetings, so that you could sort of see the concerns of the sector. And I guess really we just wanted to kind of acknowledge that that it's challenging to find the balance in terms of making sure that we get all the views right. And I guess we would welcome your questions, comments, and direction at this point.
Thank you. That's exceedingly clear and thoughtful. Deputy Mayor.
Thank you very much, and thank you for including some beautiful photographs of the Franklin ward. The questions I have is concerning the actual steps that the film industry has to go through, particularly with roads to transport and health and safety around that and traffic management plans. And we have a consenting agency via local boards, although it's tick box via local boards, we provide a consent for films to go ahead. But then there's a separate process for Auckland Transport that I understand that can be somewhat problematic. Should we have a one-stop shop for all film activity so to enable best practice and best delivery?
There is a separate process that also includes local boards when we go to have traffic management plans. Auckland Transport, I suppose, because they are the traffic management agency, they're the ones that have consideration or the ability to approve, because they're the agency with the knowledge of what's required, what other works are in those spaces and things like that. So I think it would probably be quite difficult to have a one-stop shop when you've got so many different regulations. I personally feel that probably the transport still needs to maintain in Auckland Transport's domain for them to make the decisions on traffic management plans, because they can be so involved.
Madam Chair, the comment I'd have would be that traffic management plans have become an industry unto themselves, whether you're building a roundabout or filming a film. And it's a big industry and a very expensive one and a time-consuming one. And in this sort of instance, in many cases, the shoots are bespoke. But that doesn't mean you have to have the million cone scenario. So I'm going to really encourage to Auckland Transport to say they need a dedicated unit to make this as simple and as quick and as effective as possible. And that I, for one, having received some issues from my ward from people filming ads and basic, fairly simple things, complaints about Auckland Transport's tardiness and slowness to react, that we need to make sure they do manage this in the best possible way going forward.
Can we pick that up, or how do you want that addressed, Deputy Mayor?
I think they've heard what the staff heard what I said, and I'll certainly be talking to the CEO of Auckland Transport about it when I catch up with them on Friday morning.
Okay.
Sorry, I have to agree, it is a resourcing. Yeah, it does need to have more resourcing. Yeah.
Because I think some of the issue, and we've been talking about that with the industry, is scalability. If you're filming Lord of the Rings or a one-day advertising shoot or something, you need the scalability. It's just kind of bonkers. Councillor Filipaina.
Thank you, Chair. Now, on the presentation, and in particular the public consultation slides that have been raised through the submission.
Through the chair. And I guess that's what we've tried to do because we're aware of, really the protocol is intended to enable filming. But what we've tried to do, I guess, is sort of strengthen up some of the messaging around the importance of things like the environment, the importance of things like our native species to the communities of Auckland. So, and I suppose what we were trying to do was be a bit more transparent about the fact that while Auckland, wants to be film friendly, there's still a need to balance and look at, given a location and given the proposed filming activity, it really does come down to, is that filming activity appropriate or manageable in that location? So it really does come down to that, trying to provide a document which provides a framework where you consider for that particular film activity, are the potential impacts of that filming activity manageable within that location at a level that would be acceptable to the public of Auckland?
And Chair, just a comment, just to reinforce what you said earlier around engaging with the film industry. Because I think it is important when we end up taking into account how we're going to at least have the ability for the film industry to do what they need to do, but taking into account the views that the community have sort of outlined in their submission. So look, ladies, thank you.
Okay, so just as we talk, Councillor Philippina and Councillor Cashmore, we do have the ability today to receive the feedback and approve, subject to further direction from the committee, the protocol. It does give us a chance to do some edits and a few changes. So just while we take another question, if you can just be giving some thought to anything that you'd like to formally put into the pot. Councillor Casey.
Mine relates to section 3.4, filming potentially offensive material. This is not a new comment, but I'll ask it again because I'm not quite sure what the answer is. So let's imagine that I want to film an Allenwood Reserve in my ward and I want to do an ad for alcohol. So if I look at that section, it tells me I need to go to the Advertising Standards Authority website, so I've done that, but they just look at the way that you're presenting the alcohol, not the actual, you are presenting alcohol. And that's my issue. So in terms of our Auckland plan, which wants to reduce harm from alcohol, tobacco and gambling, that doesn't stop people asking us for permission to film those adverts. So not how they're filming, just that they are filming it. And I would have thought our Auckland plan in seeking to reduce harm would say, actually, no.
Through the Chair, I will start attempting to answer your question and then may need to hand over to Marie with her large amount of operational knowledge. What we're really reflecting in that I guess section is that we're really saying if there is nothing in law to prevent that filming from taking place, then we're sort of not saying outright that it isn't possible. I mean, I think also throughout the document, there's I guess the messaging is around compliance with Auckland Council, and the protocol does say that you're required to comply with Auckland Council policy and bylaws. So I think on the whole, what we're really trying to sort of do again is create a framework environment where it does require, I guess, consideration of is it allowed under New Zealand law, and we are aware that there might be some circumstances where an advert might not be allowed, legally you might not be allowed to show it on our screens here, but in fact there's nothing in our legislation to prevent you from filming that kind of advert here, which is a bit of an anomaly, I guess, in our legal framework. So we're really sort of basically saying that we're trying to create a framework which considers whether it's legal and then whether it does or does not comply with Auckland Council policy.
If I went back to my example, Allenwood Reserve, you can't drink alcohol and you can't smoke, but you could film an advert for either tobacco, gambling or alcohol if you complied with all the technical rules in the film protocol.
Through the Chair, can I just clarify, are you talking about a reserve that has actually a liquor ban in place? Yes. Most of them do, so.
The Chair, kind of operationally, if we have an application that has got an alcohol component, we will always check that it's not in, if it is in a liquor ban area. If it is in a liquor ban area, then we do give that advice back to production that's a liquor ban area, so we don't film in those locations. There are some reserves that don't have liquor bans, or there are time frames around some liquor bans, and that's what we tend to work with. Also, kind of a lot of the companies that sell liquor or manufacture liquor in New Zealand, they actually have a process where they've gone through a legal process when they've been drafting up their storyboards before they come to us, so they actually know whether they're compliant with law and regulations before they actually make an application with us. So we do go along those liquor ban areas and guidelines that we've got on the Auckland Council website. Does that help? Sort of.
It is. I can see Councillor Casey's issue. However, if the advertising storyboard is compliant and it's not showing risk-taking behaviour, or what is it, enjoyment enhancement through the consumption of alcohol, or whatever the wording is, and it's, you know, would pass by the Standards Authority, would be on slightly shaky ground to try and turn it down, and I couldn't really imagine why we would. Yeah, okay. Sit with that, Councillor Casey. You may have another question. Councillor Cooper.
Thank you. I guess for me, we've got $1 billion of gross revenue and 6,000 people employed in the film industry in Auckland, which is very significant. And I know there's a pie-shaped wedge comes out from Greylin right across the west, so it is quite significant for my area. And we have the film studios, several film studios, and Kumeu as well. There are, you know, I do hear over the years from the film industry that sometimes it can be very, very restrictive. We don't have elected people signing off permits for the regional parks, do we? So why do we have elected people signing them off in local parks? That's what I want to understand. Why wouldn't we delegate that? I mean, it would be a bit weird for us running around, who's going to do that today? You know, like I just don't understand that. Because I know that's some of the roadblocks for some of the filming people, that it becomes overly restricted, and sometimes the interpretation of some acts become like an urban myth that, oh, well, we've got this act, so you can't do anything. Whereas actually when you look at the act, it's not that restrictive on filming. But anyway, so why do we have elected members signing off locally but not regionally? Which is really an operational matter.
Yeah, I mean, the local boards have the landowners of the local parks and beaches.
But aren't we the landowners of the regional parks and beaches? So I'm just trying to get a bit of here, that's what I'm saying.
Yes, so I think it's around the delegations that have been issued out to them. So at the moment the delegation sits for local parks and beaches with local boards. When we've got the roading, the delegation sits with Auckland Transport. Regional Parks sits within the staff of regional parks, and that's the framework that we operationally
So
operate.
You're saying that elected members in local areas have more say on things than governing body members. We don't get a look in.
So through the chair, as we understand it, so the delegation, landowner delegation for local parks goes to local boards. Some local boards then choose to delegate the approval for film permits to staff. Others retain the delegation at the elected member level.
Okay, so it's inconsistent across the region. So I no wonder then that the film industry get so frustrated and confused. It's quite something. So my other question is, you know, I think, do you think this document now is more restrictive or just more clarifying?
Through the chair, I guess the intention was to try and be more transparent. So based on the feedback that we had coming through from the community, and I guess we've also heard much the same messaging when we've been out to local boards, both early on and through this last round at business meetings, was that some of what we heard was strengthen the messaging. So things like just acknowledging that the environment is treasured by Aucklanders and is important, as are our native species. And then I guess it was really trying to say in relation to, whether you can or cannot film in a particular location, when it comes to environmental factors, it really does, by and large, depend on a range of things, which might be the filming activity, and it could be that at some times of year a particular environment or a particular location might have factors which make it less easy to manage or mitigate the potential impacts of filming. So I guess what we've tried to do is sort of really acknowledge that any film permit, you may on some occasions be able to film in that location, given your particular proposed activity. On other occasions, whether that's because of the time of year, the proposed activity, it might not be quite so easy to manage those factors, and you might seek to identify another location, or you might need to put in place management. So it's really trying to create a framework, but it's challenging to get the balance right, sort of signal that it's not always a straightforward yes or no.
I suppose my concern, Madam Chair, is I do not want Auckland to get a reputation as being a difficult place to work, because there's such a huge boost to our economy, but not even that, just our heritage and telling our story as a country. So I guess that's really what I'm asking is, is there going to be more friction? Is there going to be more complaints from the film industry if this is even harder? And will that mean that our council investment, because remember, we have an interest in this as a council, we own film studios and we lease film studios. We actually have a huge lease for Kumu. We actually have to make a return on that, and if our own policies are going to undermine that, that's my concern, because that would be really imprudent of us to have investments and then make a policy that makes them non-viable. You probably can't answer that, but that is my concern. We have to find the right balance, and I think everybody in the council, local boards as well, need to understand that dilemma.
I think, Councillor, you raise a really good point, but we just have to be a little bit clear that we aren't kind of judge and jury. We aren't a film studio here, therefore, we're working that way. We do need to be consistent. But just listening to what you're saying, the aha moment for me is, I wonder if we add a note to our recommendation, something along the lines of, the committee wish to explore greater consistency across the region with regard to the application of the film protocols. And I think that might pick up some of the concerns that have been raised by the industry and the concerns that have been raised by the local board, because we do have, there's a little bit of randomness in the way that they're applied, whether it's staff delegation or political, whether it's the local board plan that doesn't have any statutory weight but can be applied with regard to filming. So I just wonder if we use that as a little bit of leverage to say, we're happy to kind of adopt the protocol today. We will be making some small changes. However, the critical nature of this is in the way that it's applied. And I think the film industry is saying we actually don't understand and we don't necessarily trust totally how this is going to be applied. And our local boards are saying we want to be able to do this at an intensity local issue, at a local level. Somewhere in the middle, I think, is the sweet spot, but we're not going to negotiate that today. And it's not absolutely about the protocol, it's in how the protocol's applied. Okay, let's see if we can, Member Brown can bring a little bit of creative problem solving to this.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Look, supporting the recommendations moving forward, but I regularly happen upon the film industry in their work, doing their thing in the least likely place at the least likely time, and albeit that you stopped on the road for a few short minutes, it feels like 3 hours. So you let them have it, right? Having said that, I do acknowledge the industry coming together on the matter because for all intents and purposes, it's been pretty loose over the years in terms of not just the industry, but agencies that promote our city, for example, including our own CCO. Very, very well known, Madam Chair, around lack of notice, lack of due process when they actually execute the film industry out in the field to go and do our work. So I think we too need to accept a little bit of responsibility over what we're asking them to do. But a couple of things. So the concern I have would be probably secondary to what the report's asking, insofar as the protocol, I'm concerned, could limit the industry, and not knowingly, right? And I'll give you an example. I've just done the karakia for Netflix at Highbrook Drive. I can't mention the show they're doing, but it's 10 episodes across our beautiful city. There are 6 studios set up inside this facility, which I understand our CCO with our council are strongly supporting. But here's the thing, it's not big enough. They're looking at rural landscapes that are big enough, but can't actually host them because of the rural rules. However, the protocol, unknowingly, could amplify the industry without us really meaning that they're about to confront that rural landscape, otherwise they're walking. So I acknowledge what Councillor Casey's talking about, but the reality is it's upon us now. So the concern that we have is ensuring the protocol isn't limiting the industry and our sales potential. But the second thing I have is, how do you propose to manage case by case? I mean, what's the framework? If we don't have a framework, and in it the protocol is to some degree, some submitters are asking for a case by case situation, and my view would be that's the current status of what it's always been. So do you have a comment on what are the tools and instruments that the council have, if assuming we adopt this, that enables a case-by-case situation where the industry is looking to invest in a rural situation that arguably the activities don't permit? Kia ora.
That's exactly what you said. Devil's in the implementation.
Yeah, I mean, it's a really difficult one to answer fully. I mean, how we do manage everything that we receive on a case-by-case basis, because every single film application is individual. There's no one film application that's the same. So it's always a matter of us kind of reviewing the applications when they come in and then working with the decision makers to kind of, sometimes it can't be fully achieved, but in consultation with kind of the production and also the landowners, we mitigate concerns and see how we can manage them. Sometimes it might be, for instance, if they're wanting a dog to be off leash in an area, we can't manage to get an exemption for the dog to be off leash, but we might be able to mitigate for them to use a monofilament leash, so it can't be seen on there. And every single one we take on a case by case to try and work and mitigate concerns. It is more difficult.
I know you're in the context of filming in the field.
Yeah.
I'm saying it's the same thing, except this is filming inside sheds in a rural facility, right? That right now probably it doesn't permit it.
That would be on a private property, and the Auckland Film Protocol is a document that overarches public open space. It's not in relation to private property.
Thank you, we're done. Thank you.
Sorry.
I did read that, but thank you.
No, that's a really good thing to clarify. Yikes, how are we doing number-wise? I think Councillor Hills is just going to get a coffee. He wants to leave the room.
Quality, not quantity.
Okay, I know. We just have to have a quorum. We've got we'll just plough on. This is a thorny one though, and it's a really critical one, and I knew this was going to be our gnarly one to get tied up on. So we're not going to land it perfectly, but I think we've got to the heart of the issue, which is how do we get consistency? How do we listen to what the community have told us, which is we don't want carte blanche around our region, but we sure as heck want to support the film industry because it's backbone of large parts of our community. Somewhere in the middle, no one's going to be completely happy. We just don't want people on one side to be really unhappy. So if we note the consistency's the issue, and we undertake with the film industry and our key local boards to actually work on a bit of trust building around the consistent application of the protocols, that feels to me like a sensible way forward. Councillor Casey.
I've got another question, similar to the last question, but it's better constructed. How does allowing the filming of an advert for alcohol, tobacco or gambling reduce harm from alcohol, tobacco and gambling that we are trying to achieve in the Auckland Plan?
I think we might actually tag our staff out of this discussion because it's almost an impossible one to answer. I think, to me, it comes into we are not quite the boss of everything. We're the boss of what happens in that public open space, and we can make decisions. However, it's a little bit like the RMA. It's around truck movements, it's around impact on the environment, it's around cleaning up after yourself. It's not necessarily about content, because once we start to try and judge, there are some alcohol advertisements that are fine. They'll meet the standards, the whatever we call it, the Standards Association doodahs, and not cause a single problem. Are we going to say no to them just because we're going to say no to alcohol? I think we're going to place ourselves in an impossible situation if we try and overstep the standards mark. I don't know, that's not exactly what you wanted to hear, Councillor Casey. I don't think we can actually, because, to be blunt, you could be, our pirate rum, and you could be drinking cold tea. So in effect, on the park that you're on, no one's breaking any rules. But the Standards Authority would say if you're ooh-ahing with your cold tea and behaving dangerously and promoting dangerous use of alcohol, then it would be caught via the standards. But I don't think we can catch it via the protocol is the answer that I'm wiring on to try and get to. I think we might have talked ourselves to a standstill. Councillor Collins? We are. So I'm going to move the recommendation. We're going to work with our film industry and our key local boards on the consistency. We are going to try and pick up a little bit of clarity, perhaps in the wording that might be causing some of the greatest concern. That's what we're undertaking to do. I'll move it, seconded by Councillor Filipaina. I'll put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Against, carried. Thank you, team. And thank you, Christian, for being here to kind of be part of this conversation. We will pick this up. And we will now move before we lose people. Item 10. Oh, wonderful, Richard, you've sat there all the way, and I suspect, my dear friend, we're just going to go, yay, let's do that.
I am conscious of your time and respectful of that. We'll take the report as read. It's very standard. The only thing I want to point out is that this is a great thing where the community have actually got together and created public art, and we've been maintaining it for a number of years. They're comfortable with how we're maintaining it, and they're offering it as a gift to us, so that's a good sign. That's all.
Councillor Alf, did you want to just say a couple of words to thank the Trust?
Definitely. The Trust, and I'm sure that both Councillor Fessel, Collins and I, way back in the day when it first got mooted for the Honourable and late David Longy, So being a long-term resident of Māngere, my mother used to hassle him so many times in his office. David just really tried to lock the door when he saw my mother coming down the street, because he just was a troublemaker. But look, in regards to this, I just want to acknowledge the trust. I also want to acknowledge the work that they've done during this time. And I know that both, again, Councillor Collins and I, we ended up getting an email early on in the piece from Christine O'Brien, tabling with us and saying, hey, Alf, just be aware that I think the Trust are looking at putting this through to the public art. And so, Chair, Ian, definitely just want to acknowledge the Trust and Christine in regards to giving us the heads up, and definitely support it coming into the fold, into the portfolio of public art. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor. So it's been moved by Councillor Filipaina. I think, was it seconded by the Mayor? Yep. I will put that. All those in favour, please say aye. Aye. Against? Carried. And thank you for providing the awesome photos of all the public art we've got in our end-of-year report. It's fantastic.
And thanks very much for your support over your team. It's been really, really valued.
Thank you.